Hello, everyone. I'm going to make some quick videos to help with some topics in homework 1 and Alex that we won't have time to get to in class. These are mostly review from Math 1111, but just in case you need a refresher, I wanted to make a quick video for you. So the first thing that we're going to go through is solving quadratic equations. So a quadratic equation is really an equation where you have the variable to the second power. That's what makes a quadratic is that x squared term. So the way we're going to solve quadratics, we have two different methods of solving here. The first thing that I want you to try is to solve by factoring. I always want this to be your first line of defense. Try to do this one first. So to solve by factoring, the way that you're going to do this is the first thing is I want you to write your equation in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. If it's not currently in that form, then move everything to one side, combine any like terms, and get ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Having this 0 on the right-hand side is hugely important to this process, so make sure you move everything to the other side. And then once you have that correct form, I want you to factor everything on the left side. Factor that ax squared plus bx plus c expression. We covered that in class on Monday, January 9th. So go ahead and factor. And then the third thing that you're going to do is once you're factored and you have thing 1 times thing 2 equaling 0, you're going to set each factor equal to 0. So what that means is we'll have thing 1 equals 0 or thing 2 equals 0, and then you're going to solve each of those equations. So that's how we're going to solve by factoring. Again, I want you to try that method first. Not everything can be factored, but if it can be factored, this is going to simplify your life a great deal. So what if you try to factor and the expression that you have, that ax squared plus bx plus c, is not factorable? You can't get it to factor. Then you're going to take out the quadratic formula. This is something that is always going to solve every quadratic equation. This will always solve quadratic equations. I like to call this, excuse me, I like to call the quadratic formula a sledgehammer. It'll fix everything. It's just going to make a mess in the process. So that's why I want you to kind of wait and try factoring first and only use the quadratic formula as a last resort because it's messy. So to solve by the quadratic formula, the first thing that you're going to do, again, is move everything to one side and get a 0 on the other side. So you'll write your equation as ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then once you have it in that form, you're going to apply the quadratic formula to solve the equation. Quadratic formula says that the solutions look like x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of that in the numerator, all over 2a. So minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, everything over 2a. So again, this always works, but it's messy, and even after you get everything plugged in correctly, you have to be very careful with order of operations and plugging it into your calculator to get that to work correctly. All right, so let's try a couple of these. So let's try number 1 here. We have the equation y squared plus 3y equals 0. This is already in the correct form. We have a 0 on one side all by itself. Everything's on the other side. So we're going to try solving by factoring first. So let's try factoring this quadratic expression on the other side, y squared plus 3y. First line of defense for factoring is to see if something comes out. I can take a y out of everything over here, so I'm going to take a y out and start my parentheses. And when I factor out a y of everything, I have y plus 3 left in here. And that left side is now factored, and I have equals 0. So I indeed do have thing 1 times thing 2 here. Y by itself is my thing 1. Y plus 3 is my thing 2. Those are my two factors being multiplied. I'm going to set each one equal to 0. So either y equals 0 or y plus 3 equals 0, and we'll solve each of these out. Y equals 0 is already solved. And to solve y plus 3 equals 0, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, and I have y equals -3. These are our two solutions. So that's how we solve a quadratic equation by factoring. Let's try number 2. It's, again, if you want to pause this video, try this on your own, and then when you're ready, you can hit play, and then we'll work it out together. But try to walk through the steps and see if you can kind of work through it on your own. All right, hopefully you've had a chance to work through that on your own. So the way that we're going to do this, the first thing we need to do is get a 0 on one side. I don't currently have that. I like to keep the x squared positive, so I'm going to move everything to the left side. So I'm going to add that 7x to both sides, and then I'm going to subtract that 18 from both sides to move everything over. So here we're going to have x squared plus 7x minus 18 equals 0. Okay, we're going to factor this thing on the left. So in order to do that, because my leading coefficient is 1 here, that's going to simplify our lives a little bit. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to -18 and add to +7. So if I want something that multiplies to -18 and adds to a +7, the two numbers I'm looking for here are +9 and -2. And so you can split your middle term here and then factor by grouping. But since our leading coefficient is 1, we can actually just pop those numbers into parentheses with those x's. Okay, so now our left side is factored here. I've got thing 1 times thing 2 equaling 0. So we're going to set each of those things equal to 0. So either x plus 9 equals 0 or x minus 2 equals 0. Solving each of those out, we get x equals -9 or x equals 2. And those are our solutions to the quadratic equation. All right, we got a couple more examples here. Number 3, x squared minus 3x minus 7. My leading coefficient here is 1 again, which is going to make our lives easy. So we are looking for two things that multiply to -7 and add to -3. So let's see. If it has to multiply to -7, I know the only things that multiply to 7 are 1 and 7. One of them has to be negative to multiply to -7. But whether I have -1 and +7 or -7 and +1, I'm never going to add to -3. So I actually cannot find two numbers that multiply to -7 and add to -3. What that means is that my equation or my expression over here is not factorable. Okay, so factoring is not possible here, which means we need to take out our sledgehammer. And we're going to solve this with a quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula says the solutions to this are x equals minus b, our b value here. Actually, before we do this, why don't I identify, oh, sorry, we'll keep everything blue here. And then, sorry, I'm trying to switch colors just for a second here. So my a value is 1, my b value is -3, and my c value is -7. I just wanted to kind of make a note of that so that I don't know why this keeps changing. Let me see if now I come back and change it. Yeah, okay, there we go. Okay, so um, now that we've identified A, B, and C, I can pop everything into my quadratic formula. So minus B, which is -3, plus or minus the square root of B, which is -3 squared, minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is -7, all over 2 times A, which is 1. Okay, so we've plugged everything into the quadratic formula. It's pretty messy, so now we just have to do the arithmetic and fight through it. So take a deep breath, and here we go. So minus a -3 becomes a +3, plus or minus, let's simplify inside the square root. -3 squared is -3 times -3, that's a +9. And then -4 times 1 times -7, that becomes +28. So I'm going to have 9 plus 28 underneath that square root. And all of that up there is going to be over 2. And so my solutions here are 3 plus or minus the square root of 37 all over 2. The square root of 37, that's not a pretty number. It doesn't simplify. 37 is actually a prime number, so there's really nothing that we can do here. Those are our solutions. So this actually represents two separate numbers, 3 plus the square root of 37 over 2, and 3 minus the square root of 37 all over 2. So to get decimals, you'll put each one of those into your calculator to get a decimal. So you should have two separate answers here. All right, so number 4. Again, if you can pause the video, try to work through this one on your own, and then we will come together after you've given it a go, and we'll go through it. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to go through this on your own. So the first thing that we need to do is get everything over to the other side and make sure we have a 0 on one side. But I have this multiplication here that's freaking me out. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute before I start moving things over. It's just going to simplify things for me. So I'm going to have x squared over here. And then when I distribute, I'm going to have 3x minus 6 over here. Now I can start moving things over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. I'm going to add 6 to both sides. And I will get x squared minus 3x plus 6 equaling 0. Okay, so I'm going to try to factor this. So my leading coefficient is 1 here again. So I'm looking for two things that multiply to +6 and add to -3. Okay, so the things that multiply to 6 are 1 and 6, or 2 and 3. Because I need to multiply to a positive number and add to a -1. I know they're both going to have to be negative. But that doesn't work. -1 and -6 add to -7. -2 and -3 add to -5. I'm never going to get two numbers that satisfy that criteria. So my expression over here is not factorable, and we need to get out our sledgehammer. So x equals minus b, which again is -3, plus or minus the square root of b, which is -3 squared, minus 4 times our a value of 1 times our c value of 6. And then all of that is over 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, everything's plugged in. Take a deep breath, and we're going to start the arithmetic. Minus a -3 becomes a +3. Plus or minus, underneath the square root, we've got -3 squared is a +9. -4 times 1 times 6 is a -24, all over 2. And so this is 3 plus or minus the square root of -15 all over 2. Now something weird happens here because I have the square root of -15. That means I'm looking for a number that when multiplied by itself gives me -15. I actually can't find a real number that when multiplied by itself gives me -15. So because I have the square root of a negative number, this actually has no real solutions. Um, Here in pre-calculus, we are going to be working with real numbers only. And so because this has only imaginary numbers as solutions, I've got no real solutions. And that is kind of where we'll leave that. Okay, hopefully that helped. That's going to be your process for solving quadratic equations. Let me know if you have any questions about that. Have a great day.